Thank you so much for it's such an honor to be here to present about this today. This is one of my favorite topics, actually, because when we were new and starting out, it was really hard to suss out what would do well in our oak woodland garden. And having access to the material on your site, Kathy Kramer, and bringing back the natives just was such a great resource for us to help figure these things out, and especially your YouTube channel. So I will jump right into this, but I wanted to say first, I'm going to talk fast, cover a lot of information, and there's a link and a QR code at the end of this that leads directly to not only this slide deck, but also to the keystone species signs that Kathy and I worked on with Stephanie Preugel this last year. And so it will all be available to you. So I skip over something, you can listen to it again or access that link. And I want to say too, I'm going to do a little bit of repeat from my Sun talk in a few places just for people who are tuning in only to this topic. So for those of you who saw Doug Tallamy's talk yesterday or before, you know that he speaks of the importance of growing native plants so that life can thrive in our gardens. And it really was an eye-opener for us to realize that the non-native plants that we were growing were really detrimental to the ecosystem. If you missed Doug's talk, this is it in a nutshell. You know, bird populations are declining, the birds and insects are both declining, and they need our help. And the imported plants create dead zones for nature. And because the insects need to eat the native plants that they co-evolved on in order to reproduce. And the birds need the insects, especially the caterpillars, to feed their young. So you really make a difference when you plant natives, and especially the keystone species I'm going to talk about today, that really are the ones that really boost ecosystems and create more habitat. And let's visualize how this looks for a moment. So just a comparison here, the green bars on the left are the California native plants that grow in our area, the oaks and native cherry and currant, many of the plants you've heard about today if you've been listening to other talks. And these are just so many species of butterflies and moths can lay their eggs on these plants. The caterpillars hatch and eat the leaves, and the provide food for baby birds. And so it's just a fabulous cycle. In contrast, the red bars on the right are the imported plants. The caterpillars did not co-evolve with here. In their native countries, the caterpillars can eat them. But here you have the acacia, agapanthus, eucalyptus, ice plant, ivy, the list goes on. And these are creating a huge food deficit. If you walk through our neighborhoods, there's just not enough food to feed the ecosystems. And I know about this personally because I used to be the person growing those useless not native plants. So here's our garden back in 2021. We were so inspired by Doug Tallamy's talk. Actually, we heard a CNPS talk in 2020, November, and then we also heard one here on Bringing Back the Natives that was more oriented toward California. And that just got us fired up. And so we started by tearing out the lawn. It's the largest crop in America. We have 40 million acres of lawn in the United States, and it feeds nothing. Then we took out our imported shrubs, our box hedge, our Pieris japonicus. We even took out a few Japanese maples. And we also ripped out heavenly bamboo, which, by the way, is poisonous to cedar waxwings. They gorge on the seeds, and they are deadly. So if you want to take out your heavenly bamboo and plant toyon perhaps instead, those are beautiful red berries that are healthy for the birds. I also wanted to say we both work full time. And so, you know, we might run out of hours in the day. Here's my husband in the middle of the screen, ripping out a hedge on the weekend in that rainy January we had. The rains provide a great opportunity to do that kind of thing because the ground is soft. There I am at night after work, planting some beautiful varieties in that space instead, and we'll get to that plant in a moment. But anyway, and because we have a giant oak tree, we started planting plants for shade. So one of the ones we started with was coffeeberry. It's such a beautiful evergreen shrub, and it can grow 15 feet tall, but there are smaller varieties. We're growing some Eve Case and Mount San Bruno to create sort of a nice sort of foundation of evergreen in our garden, and a little bit of a sense of seclusion. They have adorable tiny little flowers that the bees flock to, and little berries. They're only edible to wildlife. They're not actually coffee. So people get confused. But this is something you can also grow in sun, so it's very versatile. And the key point here is 33 different species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant. And we already see some little bites and nibbles out of the leaves from some little caterpillars that are eating our plants. So it's fabulous. Also, one of our real favorites is this beautiful ribes, also called a currant. It's kind of medium sized and it's deciduous, but it really doesn't, its leaves aren't gone for too much of the year. It starts in very early spring, late winter to get leaf out and get some gorgeous blooms. And it's a hummingbird magnet. The hummingbirds come visit ours and the neighbors comment on it. It's really a showstopper. So I recommend planting those where you can enjoy them. And they do well in partial shade. And 122 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant. So it's really a very, very valuable plant. And this huge Ceanothus silk moth is just one of those many species. I hope we get one someday. This is another plant that I just think is underused in gardens. It's one of our favorite in our yard. This gooseberry is actually related to the ribes I just mentioned, but it has thorns. And so it's, some people are nervous about planting it. We actually planted it. We mulched heavily underneath it so we don't get weeds, and the hummingbirds just flock to it. I found some little caterpillars actually living in the ground around it. I haven't identified them yet, but it's definitely drawing in wildlife. And I hope someday that we see a tailed copper, which is one of the 122 species of butterflies and moths that can lay eggs on this plant. So that's just a gorgeous little butterfly. This is a fabulous plant that we just started growing in our garden this year. It makes a lovely ground cover and it suppresses weeds when it does. And the foliage is so lush and just year round, you have this lush green in your garden. Beautiful white flowers. Our neighbors have commented on those. And then little tiny strawberries that we just leave for the wildlife because, that's really what we're trying to build here. And, but all parts of this plant are edible. And it's very versatile because it grows in sun and shade. So you can move, have those around your garden. And 58 different species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant, including this two-banded checkered skipper, which is mud puddling right here. It's getting some nutrients from the mud. And there's its caterpillar form. This is a thimbleberry. We haven't grown this yet, but we're going to do this in our backyard in the coming year. It's kind of related to the blackberry and raspberry, but it doesn't have thorns. And so its fruit ripens in summer. It's edible, very popular with, like I said, the birds, and it does like shade. And 94 different species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant, including this amazing white-lined sphinx moth, which is, people call it a hummingbird moth because it's about the size of your hand. It looks like a little hummingbird flying around. Equally beautiful, I think, is that caterpillar on the left. And I hope to see them munching through my yard as well. Here's another one. This is goldenrod, and it has such beautiful, attractive spires of yellow flowers, and it blooms through late summer into fall. That's a time when most other flowers have stopped blooming. And so it really fills a nice gap in the garden. Very showy and beautiful. And it's also versatile. Will grow in full sun or part shade. And 55 different species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant, including the northern checker spot that you'll see in your gardens in April and May. So I want to note here that as a chrysalis, a lot of butterflies and moths rest in the leaf litter underneath your plants. So leave that so that they can thrive. We just ripped out some Chilean jasmine right next to our front door, and we've put up this pink honeysuckle instead. We've actually planted several plants to go up a big trellis. It's perfect for a spot where you need to go vertical. Maybe you have a small garden or you want to do something beautiful next to your front door. The hummingbirds love this plant and will come visit it, as will the bees and the butterflies. It's just a great pollinator plant. So we have 30 different species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant. And again, this is another good one for the white-lined sphinx moth. Here is ocean spray, and it's got a beautiful flower. We haven't grown this yet, but we're planting in our backyard. It thrives in shade and part shade. And 38 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant, including this beautiful pale swallowtail butterfly. As was mentioned in an earlier talk, we have a native rose, and it's just a gorgeous a luminous flower that, because it's single petaled like that, is easily accessible to the bees and the butterflies for nectar, and also is not an invasive, it's a native. And so 95 different species of caterpillars and moths can lay eggs on this plant, including this variable checker spot. I don't know which is more beautiful, the butterfly or the caterpillar, but I hope to see those munching along in my garden soon. We are growing a lot of these asters in our front yard, and our neighbors stop and ask what they are. They're really beautiful, and the bees flock to them. They're really a really nice complement to other plants, maybe some of your other shrubs and things like that. It's a nice perennial. And these do also live in full sun, and 53 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on this plant. And here's the northern checker spot, just beautifully luminous butterfly that I hope you see in your garden. Here's hummingbird sage. Someone had asked earlier, is there a sage for shade? And I'm excited to say yes. It produces a beautiful green mat, like pictured below, and also is host to 65 different species of butterflies and moths, including this wavy-lined emerald moth that, as a caterpillar, disguises itself with pieces of the plant. So we're very excited to have a lot of that growing in our yard. And the hummingbird actually makes a circuit between all our plants now, and this is one of her favorites that she visits. As mentioned in an earlier talk, the hollyleaf cherry is a fabulous tree. We plan to grow it as a hedge across our back, where we want to have a little bit more privacy. And I've seen this growing at the Woodside Library near us as both a tree and a shrub. And it is really, you see a lot of insects attracted to this. And we do see these Western tiger swallowtails flying around in our area, because they feast on this plant and some of the other trees that are listed here. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the oak, the powerhouse of the ecosystem, which hosts 270 species of butterflies and moths. I want to say about the coast live oak. This is a good oak, along with the scrub oak for gardens, even though this particular specimen, this picture taken by Kathy's husband, Mike, even though it looks very large, there's one in our neighborhood that is mature. It's probably about 30 feet high, but the trunk really fits nicely into a small space in a corner of a garden. And we were amazed to see how well it works as a street tree. The California sister dines exclusively on oaks, so you must have oaks if you want this beautiful butterfly. And I think the most beautiful caterpillar I've ever seen, that is the California sister caterpillar. So you may say, oh, well, this is all great about these native plants, but I have lots of butterflies coming into my garden. And what's wrong with all of these cosmos and marigolds and Shasta daisies that they visit? And I like to point out, this is like a bar. They're drinking nectar, and they can drink nectar from a wide variety of different flowers. But there's no restaurant, there's no food for the next generation. There's no place for them to lay their eggs. The native plants are the restaurant. And that also has nectar, but has the bonus of having the food to grow the caterpillars that feed the birds and the entire ecosystem. So we really, really need to help them by growing our natives. Here's our garden now. We've taken out all the lawn and hedge. It's still a young garden, but already we have manzanita blooming. We have a beautiful golden flowered ribes in the middle picture there. To the right of it is the red flowered currant that we mentioned earlier. Below on the bottom row, we have the coffee berry, and we have the asters, and we have the strawberries, and we have so many more. We're actually growing every single plant I mentioned today, with a few exceptions that I called out. And we are leaving the leaves. This is the most important thing that we did besides growing natives. We allowed the acorns and the leaves to nourish the ground, to create cover for the pollinators that nest in the ground, insulation for the plants. And, some butterflies and moths, like this morning cloak, actually overwinter in those leaves. And so when we sweep away the leaves and the acorns, we're destroying all those chrysalises and all of those insects that would provide life. And the acorns themselves, I just saw a squirrel dig up an acorn yesterday that it buried in December. So we really, really need to leave everything on the ground where it lands. And nature is exploding in our yard. I can't emphasize this enough. We are seeing so much more life now that we ripped out our lawn and hedge. We are seeing all sorts of butterflies. We're seeing more bees, not pictured here, hummingbirds, Salamanders have moved in. It's just a whole ecosystem, and we've done the whole front yard. We're looking forward to doing the back. And I just want to take a quick moment to say we're saving money on water. This bottom line here, this blue line, is California, it's precipitation, the natural precipitation pattern. And above it is the green line, that's the native plant natural pattern for consuming precipitation for their water needs. But above that, the yellow line are the, quote, drought-tolerant natives from the Mediterranean and from places like Australia that get, like Sydney, gets occasional monsoons and certain downpours that don't map to California weather. So we really need to grow the things that really map to our natural precipitation. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, that red line up there is lawn, and it's the most thirsty crop of all. And as I said, it's 40 million acres of the United States and growing. More people are planting lawns every day. It feeds nothing. And the chemicals that a lot of people use on it are actually very detrimental to not only the environment, but to their own health. So don't use pesticides or herbicides. And if you can, remove or reduce your lawn. And we felt like we were doing our part, but what could we do beyond our own garden? Well, we could take some action. So one thing that I did recently, as Kathy Kramer mentioned, we designed some keystone plant signs, and these slides are based on those. So if you love these beautiful pictures of the plants and the butterflies, then download them and put them up in your own garden to inspire your neighbors, or use them if you work in a public pollinator garden. They're great signs for that. School gardens, classrooms, it's a great learning tool for kids. You can put them up in nurseries, and you can also use them at different events. So you can download these. I have a link again on my very last slide, and you can also take action by going on the actual Bringing Back the Natives garden tour. So the dates here, I know you've seen them before, but May 6th are the Bayside Gardens on Saturday, and then Sunday, May 7th, from 10 to 4 are the Inland Gardens. So start growing these keystone plants today and revel in all the life they bring to your garden and balcony. I had one more quick thing, Kathy, about taking action. I'm not going to go as long as I had planned to on this slide, but I did. Kathy, you asked me yesterday about ways that I've taken it beyond my own garden. And I just want to say, being on social media, getting on Nextdoor, sharing information and seeds. I even started a Nextdoor group, and so we share seeds and plants there. And then developing local partnerships with California Native Plant Society. We're doing something called the Wildflower Ambassadors, where we also at events are giving away seeds and promoting this. And I just hope that you all will explore creative ways that you can connect with others and bring back native ecosystems. And here's my information, and I welcome any questions. Hold up your phone for a QR code to either my slide deck or to the Keystone Plant signs. And I know I went kind of quickly past those, but I really hope you'll explore each and every one. I think we have over 40 now there. So they go way beyond this talk, and they're just a great resource. And that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer. So Jennifer did make the Keystone Species signs that are on the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tour website under Keystone Species. So if you're wondering what are the best plants for wildlife, there they are, and they're just beautiful. And you'll see some of them in the gardens on May 6th and 7th. I see that Jennifer's husband has put a link to the to the signs in the chat, if it's easier for you to download from there. Let's see, question from YouTube. Jennifer, does the fire department give you any grief for leaving the leaf litter in your yard?
Well, that is a consideration. I see that come up a lot. What is interesting to me is the leaves fell in mostly November and December. Then we had torrential rainfall, which started to break the leaves down, and they grew a lot of interesting molds and things that the soil actually needs to make it more robust. And then they got kind of moved around by the creatures, and the acorns got eaten. And so in our garden right now, it's not really a fire hazard. They've really been kind of absorbed into nature. And then we've also added in some places, we put a little bit of dirt over areas where we wanted to plant something new or whatever. So no grief so far, and not the kind of fire hazard we have with some of the plants like eucalyptus that are very flammable.
So I want to say it was just a pleasure working with Jennifer. She was the brain and brawn behind the development of those signs, and she did a beautiful job. Jennifer, can people get hold of your next door group? Oh, there it is, the ND.
Yeah, next door. So I didn't spell that out, but yeah, the next door group is here. And so I really welcome you to join it. It's, even though it's next door, they allow you to join groups from anywhere. So really, it's a great place to have a conversation, ask questions. I know we were running short on time. So, if people want to ask questions there, and also I will monitor the chat as your next talk comes up, Kathy.
Okay, can you talk for just a moment about your the wildflower seeds, and then we'll pop off and let you take the rest of your questions in the chat.
Yeah. So, I realized that with our own garden, it was great impact, but it wasn't enough. We were so fired up that we started giving seeds to our neighbors. We had a big bag of wildflower seeds. We just started packaging them up in little packets. And then we thought, wow, what about the bigger neighborhood? So we started giving them away on Nextdoor, got invited to go to some libraries. And so as an individual, and I work full time. So I was doing this at night and weekends, just giving away seeds so that people and information, that's the most important thing, is we give a handout that would have all sorts of resources, like bringing back the natives or some of these talks. People could access the information and the resources and learn about the different websites like yours, Kathy. And then we realized, as we were doing all of that, we gave out just on our own about 3,000 packets. But then we realized I was invited to partner with California Native Plant Society for Santa Clara Valley, and we've been doing it at their events. And so they've been funding, and they have their own brand, and we do seed giveaways with a group called the Wildflower Ambassadors. And so that's really been a way to leverage. We probably will give away 1,000 or more packets at their upcoming wildflower show in April. So that's the CNPS SCV is the group, Santa Clara Valley. So just a word about, they can be a powerful tool for starting conversations with people.
Okay, well, Jennifer, thank you so much for giving this talk again. So before we go on to our next talk, I want to ask, if you are watching today and haven't had a chance yet to make a donation, if you'll please support the tour. You can do it on the tour's website under Please Donate. You can Venmo a contribution to @Bringing Back the Natives. We depend upon donations to keep going, and we hope that if you've enjoyed our presentation, you will help us to keep this event going.